transmigrated as the fallen general. Then I was forced to marry the enemy prince. Hello everyone, and welcome. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. It only takes a second, it is completely free, and your support helps us continue creating more emotional, dramatic, and unforgettable stories like this one. We truly appreciate every single one of you. Before we start, let us know in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is where you live right now. We always enjoy seeing how far our stories travel across the world and learning where everyone is joining us from today. Now let us begin today's story. The cruelest victories are the ones that erase the truth, and the greatest defeats are the ones that reveal who you were always meant to become. The last thing I remembered from my previous life was the deafening sound of tires skidding across wet pavement beneath a stormy night sky. Then everything disappeared into darkness. When I opened my eyes again, cold mountain air filled my lungs instead of city smoke, and the scent of pine forest replaced the smell of rain-soaked asphalt. I struggled to sit upright, only to discover that I was lying inside an enormous military tent surrounded by unfamiliar banners embroidered with silver wolves and crimson swords. My body ached as though I had spent days marching across endless battlefields. Looking down, I found myself dressed in weathered ceremonial armor marked with deep scratches that told stories I could not remember. Panic quickly gave way to confusion as countless unfamiliar memories poured into my mind. I was no longer the ordinary person I had been. In this world, I was Kalen Ashford, the once celebrated general of the Kingdom of Eldoria, a commander whose undefeated reputation had collapsed after a devastating defeat at the border. The soldiers who had once admired him now whispered the same painful title behind his back, the fallen general. I tried to understand what had happened, but every memory ended the same way. A mysterious betrayal during the final campaign had turned certain victory into complete disaster. Before I could organize my thoughts, the entrance to the tent opened and several royal guards entered with calm expressions. None of them reached for their weapons. Instead, they respectfully bowed. One of them stepped forward and unfolded an elegant scroll sealed with black wax bearing the crest of the rival kingdom. General Kalen Ashford, he announced. By decree agreed upon by both crowns, you are ordered to travel immediately to Veilmont Palace. I frowned in disbelief. As a prisoner? The guard lowered his head politely. No, General. He hesitated before continuing. As the future royal consort of His Highness, Prince Rowan Veilmont. My mind became completely blank. Surely I had misunderstood. An enemy kingdom had defeated my army, yet instead of demanding my execution or lifelong imprisonment, they expected me to marry their own prince. That made absolutely no sense. During the long carriage journey across the border, I searched the inherited memories of this world for any explanation. None existed. Even the officers escorting me seemed equally puzzled, quietly exchanging uncertain glances whenever they believed I was not looking. Snow-covered mountains slowly gave way to rolling green valleys before the magnificent towers of Veilmont Palace finally appeared beneath the afternoon sun. Unlike the dark fortress I had imagined, the palace stood surrounded by peaceful gardens, crystal lakes, and white flowering trees that seemed untouched by war. Servants greeted me with perfect courtesy rather than suspicion, guiding me through elegant marble corridors decorated with paintings celebrating generations of peace instead of conquest. Every expectation I had carried dissolved with each passing step. At last, enormous golden doors opened into a quiet royal hall filled with warm sunlight streaming through stained glass windows. A young man dressed in an immaculate white ceremonial uniform stood waiting before the throne, his calm blue eyes meeting mine with remarkable composure. There was no hatred in his expression, no triumph, no satisfaction, only quiet recognition. He slowly descended the marble steps until only a few feet separated us. Then, with a gentle smile that somehow felt both unfamiliar and strangely comforting, the enemy prince spoke words that froze every thought inside my mind. "Welcome home, Kalen," he said softly. "I have been waiting for you far longer than you could possibly remember." The quiet words echoed through the royal hall long after Prince Rowan Veilmont had finished speaking. I stood frozen beneath the towering stained glass windows, searching his calm expression for even the smallest sign that this was some elaborate political performance. Instead, his blue eyes carried an unmistakable warmth that made no sense between two people who should have been enemies. My inherited memories insisted that the kingdom of Veilmont had been responsible for my army's defeat, while every instinct from my previous life warned me never to trust someone who seemed kind without reason. Yet nothing about Rowan felt dishonest. He politely invited me to walk beside him through the palace rather than summoning guards to escort me. Every servant greeted me with respectful bows instead of suspicious glances. Even the royal advisors standing along the marble corridors treated me as an honored guest rather than a defeated general. The entire situation grew more confusing with every passing minute. Eventually, we arrived at a peaceful courtyard surrounded by white flowering trees and crystal fountains. Rowan paused beside the water before speaking quietly. "You have many questions." I folded my arms, refusing to hide my uncertainty. "You are asking the general of your enemy kingdom to marry you after defeating his army. I believe questions are justified." Instead of becoming offended, Rowan smiled faintly. "Then allow me to answer the simplest one first." He looked directly at me. "You are not here because of the war." My thoughts raced. Then why am I here? Rowan slowly turned toward the fountain as sunlight reflected across the calm surface. "The war merely brought you back to where you were always meant to return." His answer created even greater confusion. Before I could press further, an elderly royal historian approached carrying several carefully preserved scrolls tied with blue silk ribbons. After bowing respectfully to the prince, he placed the documents upon a nearby stone table. Rowan gently untied one scroll and revealed an ancient map showing both kingdoms long before the present conflict existed. Surprisingly, there was no border dividing them. Instead, one united realm stretched across the parchment beneath a single royal crest shaped like a white phoenix embracing a crown. "This map is older than either kingdom," Rowan explained. "Very few people know it still exists." I leaned closer, noticing a section of the map that had been carefully erased. Someone had deliberately removed the name of an important region from history. "What was here?" I asked. Rowan remained silent for several seconds before answering. "A place connected to someone both kingdoms agreed to forget." The atmosphere shifted immediately. Even the elderly historian lowered his eyes with visible sorrow. I could feel that they were standing at the edge of a truth no one had spoken aloud for generations. As I studied the faded parchment, my fingertips brushed the empty section where the missing name should have been. Without warning, a soft golden glow spread beneath my hand. Every line upon the ancient map shimmered gently before new markings slowly appeared where nothing had existed only moments earlier. The historian stepped backward in astonishment. Rowan did not look surprised. Instead, he quietly closed his eyes as though confirming something he had hoped for all along. When the light faded, elegant golden letters remained visible upon the map. They formed only two words: LostPrince. My heartbeat quickened as fragments of unfamiliar memories flashed through my mind. A child laughing beneath white banners. Two young boys practicing sword forms together in a peaceful garden. A solemn promise spoken before an ancient monument. The visions vanished before I could understand them. I looked toward Rowan in disbelief. He met my gaze with calm certainty before saying the words that changed everything. "That name has waited centuries for someone who could reveal it again." The glowing words remained upon the ancient map long after. The golden light had faded, as though the forgotten name had been patiently waiting for centuries to reveal itself once again. Neither Rowan nor the elderly historian spoke immediately. The silence itself felt meaningful. I stared at the words "Lost Prince," trying to understand why they awakened something deep inside me that my own memories could not explain. My fingertips still rested against the old parchment, and beneath them the paper felt strangely warm, almost alive. I slowly lifted my hand, expecting the mysterious glow to disappear, but the golden letters remained untouched. Rowan finally broke the silence with a calm voice. "Come with me. There is something you deserve to see before anyone else discovers what has happened here." Without another explanation, he led me away from the courtyard and through a series of quiet palace corridors that few servants seemed to use. Unlike the grand ceremonial halls, these passages were lined with ancient stone walls covered by faded carvings of white phoenixes, flowering vines, and crossed swords resting beneath a single royal crown. Everything about this place felt older than the kingdoms themselves. We eventually stopped before an enormous circular bronze door engraved with unfamiliar symbols. The elderly historian removed a small crystal key from beneath his robe and carefully placed it into a hidden lock. The heavy door slowly opened with a deep echo that rolled through the underground chamber beyond. At the center of the room stood a magnificent sword resting upon a white marble pedestal. Its silver blade reflected the light of countless crystal lanterns hanging from the ceiling, yet no dust covered either the weapon or the pedestal despite the chamber's age. Above the sword hung a weathered banner displaying the same white phoenix that had appeared upon the ancient map. "This is the Hall of the First Kingdom," the historian whispered respectfully. "Very few living people have ever entered." I approached cautiously, unable to explain why the sword seemed strangely familiar. Rowan remained several steps behind me, watching in complete silence. "According to every surviving record," he said quietly, "no one has been able to move that sword since the kingdoms were divided." I frowned. "Then why bring me here?" Rowan answered with complete honesty. "Because I believe history has been waiting for you." His words lingered in the still air as I reached toward the hilt almost without thinking. The instant my fingers touched the polished grip, the blade released a soft golden glow that spread across the chamber like gentle morning sunlight. The sword remained resting upon the pedestal, yet the entire room responded. Ancient carvings along the walls illuminated one after another, revealing hidden murals that had been invisible only moments before. They did not depict armies or victories. Instead, they showed two young princes from opposing royal families standing side by side beneath a white phoenix, raising their hands together in a promise of lasting peace. My heart pounded as another fragment of memory flashed before my eyes. I heard laughter echoing through a peaceful training courtyard. I saw two wooden practice swords crossing beneath blooming trees. Then I heard a familiar voice say, "No matter what happens, promise me our kingdoms will never become enemies." The vision vanished as suddenly as it had appeared. I staggered back, struggling to catch my breath. Rowan stepped forward but stopped just short of reaching for me, allowing me the space to recover. His expression held concern rather than fear. I slowly looked from the glowing sword to the ancient murals surrounding us. "Someone erased this," I whispered. The elderly historian lowered his head. "Not one kingdom," he replied softly. "Both kingdoms did." Before I could ask why, a section of the stone wall behind the pedestal quietly shifted open, revealing a hidden chamber bathed in pale golden light, and inside, resting upon another marble altar, stood a life-size statue whose face looked exactly like mine. I could not move. The statue standing inside the hidden chamber was not merely similar to me. Every feature, every expression, even the small scar near the left eyebrow, matched my reflection perfectly. Only the clothing differed. The figure wore magnificent ceremonial armor unlike anything I had seen before. Crafted from polished silver with delicate white phoenix feathers engraved across the breastplate. A royal cloak flowed behind the statue, embroidered with two united crowns instead of one. My heartbeat echoed through the silent chamber as I slowly stepped closer. The air itself seemed warmer inside the room, carrying the faint scent of cedar wood and blooming flowers despite the absence of windows. Rowan remained beside the entrance without interrupting the moment. The elderly historian lowered his head respectfully, as though entering a sacred sanctuary. At the base of the statue rested a marble inscription worn smooth by time. Most of the words had been deliberately chiseled away, leaving only one sentence untouched. "The one who protects both kingdoms shall never belong to only one." I read the surviving words twice before looking back at Rowan. Someone erased everything else. He nodded quietly. The truth frightened those who came after. His answer only deepened the mystery. I continued examining the chamber until my attention settled upon a circular mosaic beneath the statue. It depicted two kingdoms separated by a wide river, yet above them soared a single white phoenix carrying an olive branch rather than a weapon. The symbolism felt strangely comforting. Without realizing it, I stepped onto the center of the mosaic. The instant both feet touched the polished stone, soft golden light spread outward in perfect circles. Ancient crystals hidden within the ceiling awakened one by one, filling the chamber with a warm radiance that chased every shadow away. A gentle voice echoed through the room. It carried no threat, only quiet kindness. If you have returned, then hope has returned with you. I turned quickly, expecting another person to appear, but the chamber remained empty except for Rowan and the historian. The voice had come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Then another memory surfaced with greater clarity than before. I saw two young princes standing beneath the same white phoenix banner, placing their hands together over a ceremonial sword, while an elderly monarch smiled proudly beside them. "Strength protects peace," the monarch said, "but compassion preserves it." The vision faded, leaving tears unexpectedly gathering in my eyes. I could not explain why those words felt so deeply familiar. Rowan noticed my expression and spoke softly. "You are remembering pieces of a promise, not simply fragments of a past life." I slowly turned toward him. Who was the lost prince? Instead of answering directly, Rowan walked toward the statue and gently placed his hand upon its marble shoulder. "History says he disappeared." He paused before continuing. "The oldest surviving records tell a different story. They say he willingly surrendered his own name, so neither kingdom would use his sacred bloodline as a reason to wage endless war." The historian carefully removed a small wooden box hidden behind the statue and opened it upon the marble altar. Inside rested an elegant silver pendant shaped like the white phoenix, embracing two crowns. The moment I lifted it into my hands, the pendant began glowing with the same peaceful light that had awakened the sword. At that exact instant, distant bells echoed across the palace above, and somewhere far beyond the capital, hidden beneath centuries of silence, an ancient temple opened its sealed gates for the first time in generations, as though it had been waiting only for this single moment to welcome its rightful visitor home. The distant bells continued echoing across the valley long after the silver pendant stopped glowing in my hands. Their gentle sound carried neither warning nor celebration. Instead, it felt like an invitation that had patiently waited through countless generations. The hidden chamber gradually returned to silence, yet nothing inside it felt ordinary anymore. Rowan quietly watched me without demanding answers, as though he understood that some truths could only be accepted one step at a time. The elderly historian carefully examined the illuminated pendant before speaking in a voice filled with quiet reverence. "The sacred bloodline has never been a weapon," he said. "That misunderstanding created every tragedy recorded in our history." I looked toward him, still struggling to understand everything unfolding around me. If it was never meant for war, then why did both kingdoms erase the lost prince? The historian lowered his eyes with visible sadness. Rowan answered instead, "Because fear is easier to preserve than trust." He slowly approached the marble altar and gently unfolded another weathered scroll hidden beneath the wooden box. Unlike the damaged records we had already discovered, this parchment remained perfectly preserved beneath a layer of crystal. As the pendant rested in my palm, elegant golden words gradually appeared across the page without anyone touching it. "The sacred bloodline awakens only when compassion surpasses vengeance, and only the one who chooses peace over victory may inherit its blessing." I quietly repeated the sentence, feeling every word settle deep within my heart. Another memory surfaced, clearer than any before. I saw two young heirs from rival royal families standing together beside a wide river before any border existed. They promised never to allow future generations to inherit hatred in place of hope. The memory faded, leaving behind an overwhelming sense of loss that did not belong entirely to me. Rowan carefully studied my expression. "You remembered something again." I nodded slowly. "Not a battle, not a victory, a promise." His calm smile carried both relief and quiet sorrow. Then the legends were true. Before I could ask what he meant, the silver pendant released another gentle pulse of light. This time the glow spread across the chamber floor, illuminating an intricate mosaic hidden beneath centuries of polished stone. The newly revealed image depicted the lost prince standing between two kings, not commanding them, but joining their hands together beneath the white phoenix. There were no armies, no crowns raised in triumph, only reconciliation. The historian quietly wiped tears from his eyes. "Generations believed the lost prince possessed unlimited power," he whispered. They never realized his greatest gift was helping others understand one another. The truth settled over us with unexpected simplicity. The sacred bloodline had never existed to decide who deserved a throne. It existed to remind those who ruled why kingdoms should exist in the first place. As I stood there holding the pendant, the warmth inside it spread gently through my entire body. It was neither overwhelming nor frightening. Instead, it felt peaceful, as though countless forgotten hopes had quietly found their way home. Rowan stepped beside me, his voice calm and steady. Perhaps neither of us was brought here to continue an old war. I looked toward him, realizing for the first time that the distance between enemy and ally had almost completely disappeared. Perhaps, I answered softly. We were brought here to finish an old promise. At that exact moment, another hidden compartment slowly opened beneath the marble altar. Inside rested a beautifully carved crystal compass whose needle did not point north. Instead, it turned steadily until it faced the eastern mountains beyond both kingdoms, where elegant golden letters appeared upon its surface. The Temple of First Light awaits the rightful heirs of peace. The crystal compass rested quietly in my hands, yet its slender golden needle never wavered. It pointed steadily toward the eastern mountains beyond both kingdoms, as though an invisible force had already decided the next chapter of our journey. None of us questioned the direction. The silence inside the hidden sanctuary carried an unusual sense of certainty, replacing the confusion that had followed me since awakening in this unfamiliar world. Rowan gently closed the ancient scroll and carefully returned it to the marble altar. His movements were respectful, almost reverent, as though he had performed the same ritual many times in his imagination, but never believed he would witness it in reality. As we left the hidden chamber together, I found myself observing him more carefully than before. Every story I had inherited through Kaelin's memories described Rowan Veilmont as the cold heir of an enemy kingdom, a prince whose family had benefited from my defeat. Yet the person walking beside me looked nothing like the ruthless figure described by history. Palace servants greeted him with genuine affection rather than fear. Children playing in the palace gardens waved enthusiastically as he passed, and Rowan answered each greeting with the same quiet kindness. Nothing about him matched the image my former kingdom had taught its people to believe. We eventually reached a peaceful balcony overlooking the capital. Morning sunlight illuminated bustling markets, schools, workshops, and gardens where ordinary families began another ordinary day. There were no signs of celebration over a military victory. There were no monuments honoring conquest. Instead, Rowan watched the city below with calm responsibility. When I was younger, he said softly, I believed becoming crown prince meant learning how to win every battle. My father taught me something very different. He smiled faintly while looking toward the distant horizon. He told me that the greatest ruler is the one whose people forget what war feels like. His words lingered in the cool mountain air. Another inherited belief quietly crumbled inside me. If that is true, I asked, why has the conflict continued for so many years? Rowan's expression grew thoughtful rather than defensive. Because peace is often quieter than fear, and fear spreads faster. Before I could answer, Professor Aldrin joined us carrying several carefully preserved journals recovered from the royal archives. He opened one to reveal detailed records of villages rebuilt after natural disasters, farms restored through cooperation with neighboring territories, and secret agreements protecting civilians regardless of which kingdom controlled the surrounding land. Nearly every document bore Rowan's personal seal. None of this appears in official history, I said quietly. The historian nodded. Many leaders believed compassion would be mistaken for weakness. His Highness believed the opposite. I slowly turned toward Rowan. For the first time since arriving in this world, I no longer saw the enemy prince standing before me. I saw someone who had quietly protected lives while allowing history to misunderstand him. That realization settled heavily in my heart. Without thinking, I removed the silver pendant from around my neck and held it toward him. The moment Rowan's hand gently touched mine, the pendant released a soft white light that surrounded us both. It was warm, rather than dazzling, peaceful rather than overwhelming. Professor Aldrin looked on in silent amazement. The sacred bloodline is responding, he whispered. Not to power, but to trust. The light slowly faded, revealing a new inscription engraved around the crystal compass that had not existed before. Elegant golden letters shimmered across its surface with perfect clarity. Only those who walk together without hatred may find the temple of first light. Rowan looked toward the eastern mountains, then back at me with quiet determination. Then we will not travel there as enemies, he said. We will travel there as two people searching for the same truth. The following morning, Rowan and I left the palace before sunrise, accompanied only by Professor Aldrin and a single carriage carrying supplies for the journey. Neither royal banners nor ceremonial escorts followed us. The fewer people who knew about the Temple of First Light, the safer its forgotten secrets would remain. The crystal compass rested securely inside a carved wooden case upon my lap, yet every few minutes its golden needle shimmered softly, reminding us that we were moving in the right direction. Our path carried us beyond fertile valleys and quiet villages until the landscape slowly transformed into ancient forests where towering cedar trees filtered the morning light into countless golden beams. The deeper we traveled, the quieter the world became. Even the birds seemed to sing with unusual gentleness, as though respecting the sacred ground surrounding the eastern mountains. During our brief stop beside a crystal stream, Rowan handed me a simple wooden cup filled with fresh spring water. There were no royal formalities between us anymore, only quiet understanding built through every shared discovery. "Do you regret coming here?" he asked with calm sincerity. I considered the question carefully before answering. When I first arrived, I believed I had lost everything. Now I am beginning to wonder if I was brought here to find something far greater. Rowan smiled with quiet relief, and for a moment neither of us needed to say anything else. As the journey continued, fragments of unfamiliar memories appeared more frequently. Every bend in the mountain road seemed strangely familiar. Every ancient stone marker awakened another faint echo from a life I could not fully remember. By late afternoon, we reached the foot of the eastern cliffs where the crystal compass suddenly grew warm inside its wooden case. I carefully opened the lid. The golden needle no longer pointed forward. Instead, it rotated once before shining directly toward an ordinary stone wall covered with climbing vines and wild white flowers. Professor Aldrin slowly approached the cliff and gently brushed away the vines. Hidden beneath them appeared an enormous circular emblem carved into the mountain itself. Two united crowns surrounded a soaring white phoenix whose wings embraced the rising sun. The instant I stepped closer, the silver pendant resting against my chest began glowing with the same peaceful light that had awakened the ancient sword beneath the palace. Without warning, the carved phoenix illuminated from within, sending delicate streams of white light across the stone until an enormous doorway quietly emerged where solid rock had stood only moments before. There was no rumbling, no destruction, only a graceful opening as though the mountain itself had been patiently waiting to welcome forgotten guests home. Cool, fragrant air drifted outward carrying the scent of cedar, wildflowers, and rain. Beyond the entrance stretched a breathtaking sanctuary unlike anything I had ever imagined. Crystal pools reflected sunlight through towering marble columns wrapped in flowering vines. White phoenix statues lined peaceful walkways leading toward a magnificent circular temple whose roof seemed to glow beneath the evening sky. There were no signs of abandoned ruins or decay. Time itself appeared to have preserved this sacred place untouched. As Rowan stepped beside me, the pendant released one final pulse of gentle light. Every crystal surrounding the sanctuary awakened simultaneously, and a warm voice echoed across the valley with unmistakable kindness. The airs of peace have returned. At the center of the temple, a single white tree that had remained dormant for centuries slowly blossomed into thousands of radiant flowers, while beneath its branches an ancient stone table revealed a sealed scroll bearing only 4 elegant words written in shimmering gold. The final promise awaits. The sealed scroll rested quietly upon the ancient stone table beneath the blooming white tree, surrounded by thousands of glowing petals drifting gently through the sacred sanctuary. None of us reached for it immediately. The peaceful silence felt almost ceremonial, as though the temple itself wished to remind every visitor that some promises deserved patience before they were revealed. Rowan stood beside me with quiet determination, while Professor Aldrin respectfully remained several steps behind us. The The crystal pools reflected the soft afternoon sunlight, and every marble column surrounding the sanctuary shimmered with delicate carvings that had gone unnoticed before. As I looked closer, I realized they did not depict kings claiming victory over enemies. Instead, every carving showed rulers helping rebuild bridges, planting forests, welcoming travelers, and placing crowns aside while listening to their people. The message could not have been clearer. Greatness had never been measured by conquest. It had always been measured by compassion. I slowly reached toward the ancient scroll. The instant my fingers touched its silk ribbon, the seal dissolved into countless points of warm golden light. The parchment gently unrolled across the stone table without a single sound. Elegant handwriting appeared upon its surface as though an invisible hand continued writing even now. To those who arrived together without hatred, the message began. You have already fulfilled the first condition of the sacred promise. Rowan quietly stepped closer beside me. We continued reading together. The Lost Prince was never chosen because he possessed extraordinary strength. He was chosen because he refused to allow fear to decide the future of two kingdoms. My heart tightened as another vivid memory returned. I saw the Lost Prince standing before two frightened royal courts while calmly placing his ceremonial sword upon the ground. Instead of demanding loyalty, he asked both kingdoms to remember the lives that would be lost if hatred continued. The memory faded, but the warmth remained. Professor Aldrin smiled through quiet tears. History remembered the disappearance, he whispered. It forgot the sacrifice. As the final lines of the scroll revealed themselves, the white tree above us blossomed even more brilliantly. The sacred bloodline exists only to awaken understanding between divided hearts. Whoever seeks power through it shall never find it. Whoever seeks peace through it shall never lose it. Rowan looked toward me with gentle certainty. The war survived because everyone searched for the bloodline. No one searched for its purpose. I nodded slowly, finally understanding why every ancient secret had led us here. The Lost Prince had never hidden to protect himself. He had hidden the truth until future generations were ready to value compassion above victory. At that moment, the crystal compass resting beside the scroll released a final pulse of light before becoming completely still for the first time. Its needle no longer pointed toward any destination because our journey to uncover the truth had reached its end. Yet beyond the temple walls, another journey had only just begun. The white phoenix carved above the sanctuary spread radiant streams of light across the valley below, reaching both kingdoms at the same time. Farmers, merchants, children, scholars, and travelers quietly paused as white flowers unexpectedly bloomed beside roads, rivers, and village squares throughout both lands. No proclamation announced peace. No army enforced it. Hope simply returned where fear had ruled for generations. Rowan gently extended his hand toward me. Without hesitation, I accepted it. Together we turned away from the temple, carrying no weapon, no crown, and no secret meant to divide people again. We carried only the promise that understanding could outlast hatred, and as we stepped beyond the sanctuary, the ancient gates slowly closed behind us while a final inscription appeared across the white stone archway. The promise lives wherever two hearts choose peace together. Morning sunlight bathed both kingdoms as Rowan and I returned from the Temple of First Light, carrying nothing visible except the quiet certainty that the ancient promise had finally awakened once more. Word spread quickly that the mysterious white flowers blooming across villages had not disappeared with the sunrise. Instead, they continued flourishing beside roads, rivers, schools, marketplaces, and old monuments that had long been forgotten. People from both kingdoms crossed the border not as soldiers, but as travelers, craftsmen, scholars, and families curious to meet neighbors they had been taught to fear for generations. No royal decree demanded these changes. They happened because hope had quietly replaced suspicion inside ordinary hearts. When we arrived at the palace, the great assembly of both kingdoms had already gathered beneath the grand hall, where generations of rulers had once negotiated uneasy truces. This time the atmosphere felt completely different. The ancient silver pendant resting beneath my cloak remained warm, yet it no longer revealed forgotten paths or hidden chambers. Its purpose had been fulfilled. Rowan stood beside me before the assembled nobles with calm confidence, not as a prince seeking victory, but as a future ruler determined to preserve peace. Professor Aldrin carefully placed the restored records of the Lost Prince upon the central table where every representative could read them freely. No pages were hidden, no names were erased. The truth belonged to everyone now. As the oldest members of both royal courts silently read the restored history, many lowered their eyes with visible regret. They finally understood that the greatest mistake their ancestors had made was not beginning a war. It was allowing fear to erase the memory of the one person who had sacrificed everything to prevent it. Rowan gently turned toward me before addressing the assembly. History cannot be changed, he said calmly, but the future has never been written. His words echoed through the chamber with quiet strength. I stepped forward beside him and removed the silver pendant from around my neck. Rather than placing it upon a throne or inside a royal treasury, I carefully rested it beside the restored records of the Lost Prince. No kingdom should ever hide this truth again, I said softly. The Sacred Bloodline was never meant to create rulers above others. It exists to remind us that compassion is the greatest inheritance any generation can leave behind. The hall remained silent for several long moments before the oldest council member slowly stood and respectfully bowed, followed by every noble from both kingdoms. There was no celebration filled with triumph, only quiet gratitude shared by people who had finally remembered what had once united them. Later that evening, Rowan and I walked through the peaceful royal gardens where children from both kingdoms laughed together beneath blooming white trees without knowing they had once belonged to opposing nations. Watching them, I realized that the Lost Prince had never truly vanished. His promise had simply waited for hearts willing to remember it. Rowan smiled as the evening breeze carried white petals across the garden paths. "Do you still think you lost everything?" he asked gently. I looked toward the sunset stretching across the united horizon and quietly shook my head. "No," I answered with complete certainty. "I believe I finally found where I was always meant to be." As the last rays of sunlight disappeared beyond the mountains, a single white phoenix soared peacefully across the evening sky before fading into the golden clouds. While deep beneath the temple of first light, an ancient crystal engraved with unfamiliar symbols awakened with a gentle glow beside one final unopened journal, leaving behind the quiet promise that even greater secrets still waited beyond the end of this story.